Welcome in, everybody, to Week 8 reactions from Sports Bluff. Week 8 is in the books, and it was kind of a mid-week, I guess, if I'm going to keep up with the current terminology and use the word mid. Yeah, I'm a dad, and I can say that too. I want to apologize to everybody, though, because my optimism seems to get in the way of my logical judgment, and we'll talk about more of this when we do our picks later on this week. I just want to go ahead and apologize in advance because I try to be optimistic on every game, I guess, and it never plays in my favor.
Yeah, that's
Tristan,
the NFL for you.
Yeah, Tristan, I just want to say kudos to you because you have, it seems to be finally caught up with me in the picks. Again, not a pick video. I just want to apologize because even in general terms, I'm just optimistic about every team, and I need to stop being that. Like, I need to take a step back and lean on logic and not feelings. I don't know why I've switched, but that's what I've done this year so far, so I want to apologize.
Yeah, he won't make that mistake again, don't worry. I will say, as bad as the matchups looked, like on paper this looked like a bad week, there were good games.
It's a fun week.
Like, it was actually a fun week. Like, even though the matchups you weren't excited about, when you watch the games, they turned out to be good. We don't have a ton on the docket today because we're recording a day late than we usually do, so we're a little limited, but we're going to talk about the Eagles, we're going to talk about the Bengals, we're going to talk about Anthony Richardson, the Jets, and then at the end of the show, before we sign off, we're going to do AFC Mid-Season report card grades for the big teams. That's going to be fun. So I say we jump right into it.
Let's do it. All right, Tristan, well, there was a bird that was a bully this weekend, and that bird was an eagle, and that eagle was led by Jalen Hurts. The Eagles put a beatdown on the Bengals, 37-17. I mean, it never looked close. The score couldn't even be any further apart. They might as well have scored 0 because it looked awful. It was an awful outing by the Bengals. It looked like the Eagles had it all on point this week. So my question to you is, have the Eagles finally hit their stride?
I definitely think they've hit a stride. I don't know if it's their stride. I don't know how much it'll carry over. So I'm going to be honest. If anyone watched the picks, saw us talk about this, I thought the Bengals would win this game because I kind of thought they were a slightly better football team. I obviously thought they had the better quarterback and the better coach, which I obviously still think they do. But the Bengals' inability to run really bit them. And this was the first time it looked like the Eagles were playing a complete football game, like a complete team. It wasn't them having to just rely on Saquon Barkley or just rely on the defense. They all put it together. Jalen Hurts didn't blow you away throwing the ball, but he did enough. 16 for 20, 236 yards and a touchdown, 37 yards running. He had 3 touchdowns, obviously, because of the goal line stuff. Saquon Barkley, 108 yards as well. And defensively, they did really well. They held the Bengals to 58 yards rushing. That's kind of been the story of the Bengals this year. It just looks like they're rounding into form at the right time. My problem is I don't know what to take away from it. Like, I don't know if they're a team that can win playoff games, if they're like a legit contender, or if they can sneak in and get beat. I want to show you their statistics, though, for the year. Let's pull up this graphic. It's better than you think. So obviously the pass yards, not great. They're 20th, but they're 10th in pass yards on defense. They're the second best offensive rush yard team, 8th rush defense, 10th in points per game offensively, 7th in points allowed defensively, and then in total yards, 8th across the board. So other than pass yards, offensive pass yards, which is down, they're top 10 in almost every single category. And I genuinely was surprised by that. When I was doing show prep for this, I was like, let me just look up and see where they register everybody everywhere because they had such a good game. They're top 10. If they can maintain this level of play, they'll be good. I think the defense is starting to come together. That's the biggest part. And if Jalen Hurts can just not make mistakes and play a little bit more consistently, I mean, they can be a dangerous football team. I'm not ready to buy the stock of the Eagles, but this is promising for Philly fans.
Well, let's be honest, you couldn't afford it anyway.
No, I'm broke.
But Devontae Smith did show up this game, which was nice. He had that great touchdown grab from Jalen Hurts, which was a beautiful throw and catch. So it does seem like this Eagles team is putting together what we think is a stride of some sort. You said it best. I don't know if it's their stride, but it's a stride. I do think that the Eagles have a pretty good schedule coming up. So I think that's something that's going to help them out, and maybe they can squeak out the win in the NFC East. You look at the next few games, They have the Jags, the Cowboys, which, the Cowboys are, like you said earlier,
disaster
before the show, we don't have the energy to talk about how bad the Cowboys are. But then the matchup of all matchups, a game that everybody will be tuned in for, they play the Commanders Thursday night, prime time, 7:15. It's going to be fun. It's going to be at Philadelphia. That's the game to watch. That may be the game to decide the winner of the NFC East. Like, it could be.
It absolutely could be. Right now, they're, I think, a game behind. I think they're a game behind Washington as we head into today. So, yeah, they're one game behind. They got to play them twice. So, that game's going to tell us a lot, assuming both teams keep on the track. I have a friend who's an Eagles fan, and he asked me today, he said, do you think the Eagles can win the East? And even he said, he was like, I was just thinking it was Washington, but after this week, I think we got a shot. And I told him, a true analyst here, I don't know. I said, I want to see them play each other. Not because of just the final score. Like, one team could win that game and I could go with the other. I just want to see what the matchup looks like because I'm not sure. I want to see the Eagles be able to win a game without relying completely on Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, that's right. And it does seem like, when we talk about the winner of the NFC East, you look at the Commanders and it just seems that luck may be on their side after what happened on Sunday. It's one of those years for the Commanders where it just seems like everything's falling into place for them. But I do think that this is going to really come down to the defenses. I think both offenses can score just fine. I think it's really going to be up to what defense shows up, when they play each other twice this year. It's going to be who has the better defense. And right now, I think I would lean the Eagles have the better defense.
I think so. I think the Eagles' defense is more consistent, and they've got a lot of young players. So as those players continue to get better, because that's really what we've seen from Philly's defense. It's just the young players getting better, getting more comfortable playing together, playing as a unit week by week by week. That defense is getting better and better and better. And Hurts has gotten a little better too. I know he's still not what people want from him, but as long as he can mitigate the mistakes and rely on Saquon Barkley in the defense, the Eagles can go as far as that unit can take them.
And not to shy away from the fact that the Commanders' defense is getting better week to week. Like, they are improving. They allowed 7 points to the Panthers last week, which I know it's the Panthers, but they also hung 40 on them. And then this week playing against the Bears, a really tough defense. They did score 18 points, and they only allowed 15. So I think they shut Caleb Williams down completely. Like, in case you didn't realize, Caleb Williams was non-existent, especially if you played him in fantasy over Kyler Murray. I don't know who would have done that.
Idiots, that's who.
I tell you what, just don't listen to everybody's recommendations. Go with your gut on fantasy football. Do not listen to other people's recommendations. Just do what you think is best. Anyway, I digress on that. The Commanders' defense is getting better. Jaden Daniels is playing lights out, even with, 4 ribs broken or whatever it is. He gets wrapped up on the sideline, gets a kiss from his mommy, comes back into the game. He's good to go.
Throws dimes.
The dude's playing great. It's going to be really interesting to see how the NFC East shakes out, because I do believe that it's between the Eagles and the Commanders in this division.
No doubt. 100% it's between those two. I can't wait to see that first matchup.
Let's talk about what is acceptable and not acceptable when it comes to NFL franchise quarterbacks. And I'm talking about none other than Anthony Richardson, Mr. Tired Boy himself. Did you see it? Fans of our show, did you see what happened on Sunday? He tapped out to come out of the game, and I believe in a press conference said, I'm not going to lie, I was just tired. Like, that was pretty much his exact words, give or take a little bit, but that's essentially what he said. To me, this is unacceptable on every level. You are playing a tough game against the Texans. They only won by 3 points. This close to taking down a powerhouse team, and you get tired. Is this unacceptable from any type of QB that says that they are a franchise quarterback in the NFL? And also, to follow that up, is Anthony Richardson done?
It's not only unacceptable from a franchise quarterback, it's unacceptable from any football player.
Any player.
Yeah.
From Pee Wee all the way to NFL.
I might give the Pee Wee guys a pass. Let me sleep on it. Here's the bottom line for me.
I'm a really difficult coach.
You're playing. That's why all your kids quit, and they said we don't want Coach Ryan anymore.
That's right.
Somewhere else. The problem is you're getting paid millions of dollars. Like, this is, I think Charles Barkley or somebody talked about this. No, not us. I wish we wouldn't be doing this if we got paid millions of dollars. Charles Barkley, somebody talked about this with load management. They were like, you're not a coal miner. You're not a nurse. You know what I mean? You got to play basketball 4 days a week. Go out and play. This is the same thing. I understand it's a tough sport. Trust me. It's easy for me to sit here in front of a microphone and talk about it. But when all the other players are putting their bodies on the line, you're going to say, sorry, tired, tie, need a little nap, Imagine the way his offensive line fields. The offensive line doesn't rotate. They don't come out of the game. Defensive linemen rotate in and out, other positions. The offensive line is on the field every snap of the game. So then they're sitting there and they look over and they're like, well, Flacco, what are you doing here? I mean, we like you because you give us a better shot to win, but he needed a little rest because he ran a lot? Well, you got to run a lot because you suck at throwing the football. Like, it baffles me. I genuinely, when I saw it, I saw people talking about it before I saw the clip, and I was like, surely that's not what happened. Surely, he got hurt or had to come. No, he was just tired. He was tired. That suits it. That fits the situation. It is unacceptable and that's the other part. Not just any football player. When you're supposed to be the franchise quarterback, when you're supposed to be the leader of the football team, that takes it to another level, Ryan. That puts your responsibilities on another pedestal.
And I'll say this, you're in a close game.
Yes.
It's not like you were getting shut out. Like, if you were getting
I wouldn't care if you were.
I wouldn't either. But at least if you were getting shut out, you could say, like, hey, I'm just white flag. I'm done. Like, whatever. But this was a competitive game that you had a chance to win. A division game. It really blows my mind that happened. And if I was the head coach of the Colts, the GM, all the way up to the CEO, Anthony Richardson would be so done, so out of there tomorrow.
Okay, so word around the campfire is it's not all Shane Steichen's decision. I don't know how much of this is true, but the word on the street is we kind of have a Cleveland situation where Shane Steichen would have already benched him, but the GM, the owner, I'm not sure who, doesn't want it to happen because they're like, we drafted him, we want him to develop, we want him out there. But he's so bad.
It's there now.
Yeah, I understand. Let's look at this graphic. These are his games this year. You asked the question, is he done? He damn well should be. He is not a franchise quarterback in this league, Ryan. He's not a backup quarterback. He is terrible. He is not a quarterback. He's just not. Here are his stats for this year. Look at his completion percentage. Against Houston, 31%, 175 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. As you can see, look at his completion percentage, 41, 75, 50, 50, 47. Pass yards, he only has 2 games over 200. He's got a 71-yarder in there. Total for the season, a 49% completion percentage, only 900 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. And I didn't even put the fumbles in there, Ryan. I left that off the graphic. He's got like 7 fumbles. It is unbelievable. Yeah, I know he throws deep ball, and we talked about it on the show earlier in the season. Does he throw an amazing deep ball every once in a while that you go, holy crap, that was amazing? Yeah, congratulations. Having a big arm isn't being quarterback. Also, every time he releases the ball in those deep bombs, you're like, well, this could go either way. That's not the way to play quarterback. If they had Joe Flacco in there, they could win this division. Seriously, they could win the division over Houston. Anthony Richardson, if I was in charge, would never play another snap for me as the starter or as the backup.
That's why it was so vital, because you're in a divisional matchup, and this game could have changed the rest of the season for the Colts. Even more important then, that you win this football game and your franchise quarterback taps out, literally taps out. It is just, it's so shameful. If you see Anthony Richardson back on the field at any point the rest of the season, the Colts have more problems in their organization than we think. It's awful, man. I don't even, like, Pat McAfee doubled down on his response about this because I guess he was pretty, he didn't hold any,
he's a Colts guy.
He didn't hold any punches back with calling this unacceptable. He's like, I've never seen this before.
Me either.
Ever. I when it happened, I went back in my Rolodex of memories from football. Never have seen this before in my life. Even to the college level.
I know.
Now, I did see Deshaun Watson a couple of weeks ago go like this, and I think it was signaling for a massage. But other than that,
But he does that a lot.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for sure. The New York Jets have imploded, it seems, in a full swing after losing to the Patriots. Yes, you heard me right. The Patriots, even when Drake May went down and they had to send in the backup quarterback. They're now 2-5, Tristan. The Achilles isn't the problem. The receiver isn't the problem. The head coach is fired. This team is still horrific. They can't seem to get anything on the same page. So at the end of the day, who is to blame for this organizational meltdown that is happening in front of our eyes?
I mean, I hate to do it, but there's only two people to blame, and it's obvious. It's Aaron Rodgers and it's Woody Johnson. Okay, first and foremost, let's go back to the Aaron Rodgers. I don't necessarily blame them for bringing in Aaron Rodgers on the trade. You don't know the Achilles injury is going to happen, okay? Now, with that said, his last year in Green Bay, he wasn't good. I mean, he was average-ish most of the season to below average. He was not very good. But I understand it's Aaron Rodgers. You had Zach Wilson. You're like, we got to try something. You bring him in. And then the Achilles happens. Okay, here's the problem, though. Not bringing in Aaron Rodgers at an old age. We've seen teams do that. I understand that. It's worth the risk there. The mistake was completely handing the reins of the organization over to Aaron Rodgers and letting him call the shots. Because everybody can try and memory hole it and act like things went differently. The reason the fallout in Green Bay happened, besides just them drafting Jordan Love, was that they wouldn't let him have complete and total control of the organization. And they let him have a lot. Matt LaFleur really wasn't running his offense. Aaron Rodgers was calling the plays to the line. We know notoriously he doesn't like motion. He likes getting up, looking at the defense, calling a play, waiting until 1 on the play clock and snapping it. When you turn your entire franchise over to a 40-year-old quarterback who, especially coming off an injury, what do you expect's going to happen? When you have to bring in Alan Lazard and all his buddies, you're not doing what's best for the organization. You're doing what you need to do to placate and please a player. And anytime I've seen any sports team in any league do that, it has never ended well. I've never seen a professional organization turn the franchise over to a player and things go smoothly. It always goes bad. And that's on Aaron Rodgers. It's on him for asking for those things. And he can be, look, dude, I'm sick of it. I like Aaron Rodgers more than most people. I think he's entertaining. I think he's funny. But he can be coy and act like that didn't happen. It happened. You telling me the Jets just randomly said, you know what? We need to bring in Alan Lazard. Obviously not. He put a list of demands in front of them, and they met it. The second decision that really, and I'm sorry for the rant, and then I'll turn to you. The second decision that really did it was the firing of Robert Saleh. I'm not under any preconceived notion that Robert Saleh is an incredible football coach, but he's a good coach, and he had that defense playing really, really well, especially seeing once he's left how that defense has imploded. At least they were playing for something. They went like a thief in the night and took Robert Saleh away from the team when the team needed him. They just went to London and lost to the Vikings, one of the best teams in the league, barely in a close game, which they lost because Aaron Rodgers threw a pick on a would-be game-winning drive. And Aaron Rodgers can say he had nothing to do with that firing, but we know that's a lie. So it all comes back to that. It's going to taint his legacy. Ultimately, this is all because it's the Jets. But when you make these decisions, you turn your franchise over to a quarterback who's 40, coming off an Achilles, and you fire the one good thing your team had going, what the hell do you expect is going to happen?
The Jets' only 2 wins this year come from the Patriots and the Titans. That's what you have to hang your hat on. Also, isn't it funny that Devontae Adams randomly shows up at the Jets too?
I know.
You said that he has a list of demands. When you have a list of demands, you typically have something held hostage. So who's he holding hostage? Like, what makes this guy so good that you're willing to hand the keys and the car and the house and all the money, all the decision-making over to this one player who, like you said, had a crummy last year at Green Bay. No, he was injured with a thumb thing for a while and all that, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah. And what you said,
it makes you really question.
It would at least be worth it if he was good. Like you just said. Like if he was good at playing well, you could at least be like, well, okay. He's not. He's playing bad.
And then, he's got the receivers around him that he wanted, still not playing well, still not completing passes, not lining up with there was a couple of, good slant passes to Devontae Adams, whatever. Like, it was too late at that point. But then it doesn't help your case when you see people like Sam Darnold, like, balling out at the Vikings and also took down the Jets. And they had Sam Darnold on their team at one point in time, 2020.
Yes.
So it doesn't help your case at all.
Another Jets quarterback, Geno Smith, with the Seahawks in a playoff hunt.
Yeah, so now you're questioning, like, how were these quarterbacks actually bad, or is it just the Jets' curse? Because it seems like there's a Jets curse in the building, and
his name is Woody Johnson.
That's exactly right. He was an ambassador. Now I guess he lets Aaron Rodgers be the ambassador of
the Jets?
Job calling. So I'll tell you this: Aaron Rodgers they're letting him make really big decisions for a guy that's not going to be around the organization for more than 2 to 3 years.
No, I think he's probably gone after this year.
They're letting him make like 10-year decisions.
Yes.
For a guy that's going to be there for 2 years, maybe 3 max. Isn't that mind-blowing?
Even if he was spectacular, that would be mind-blowing. It would just be a step too far.
He's got a curse on Woody Johnson. Or so he's gotten some. He went into the dark space again.
He's got voodoo dolls.
Took Woody with him. You know, whenever there's a Woody in a dark space, I tell you what.
If I was in a dark space, the one thing I would be sure I had was a Woody.
That's right.
Gotta make that time pass.
Every time I go to the dark place, my checklist is Woody and everything else. And as long as I got my Woody in the dark place,
I'll be fine.
But I'll tell you this, the Jets are imploding. I think it's a huge, the 5-alarm fire, sound all the bells. They've won 2 games. The 2 games that they've won are pitiful, to be honest. It was the Patriots also when they were still not starting Drake May. So that win, doesn't really count in my book. And then they won against the Titans, which, let's be real, the Titans are an awful team. Will Levis throws more interceptions than he has pairs of shoes, I think. And it's really bad when your last 4 games, the Patriots beat you when Drake May went down. The Steelers blew you out 37-15. The Bills, 23-20, played you close. And then you lost against the Vikings, like you said, was it London, right? Or wherever, somewhere overseas, 23-17. When you look at the schedule coming up, and I know we got to wrap this up, but you have the Texans, the Cardinals, and the Colts before your bye. Do you see a win in any of those 3 games?
Dude, I mean, they're going to be lucky if they end up winning
5?
If 6 games total. Yeah, exactly. By the way, I'm not taking shots at anyone. Let's just remember, the over-under was like 9.5.
Yeah.
9.5 is what Vegas said. Yeah, that's reasonable. And we're at a point to where if they won 8 games, I would be stunned. I would be absolutely stunned.
I would be too, man. Here we go. It's the mid-season AFC report card grades. Is it mid-season? Is it not? Nobody really knows. 18 weeks, 17 games. Let's go ahead and jump into the mid-season report cards. If we're the first to do it, let it be. And everybody click, share, subscribe to our channel to see the NFC next week. But let's start off with the AFC, and let's talk about no other team than my Buffalo Bills. My grade for them, I'll go ahead and give it to you. It's going to be an A-, okay? They've done a few things right with getting Amari Cooper in. Even though he was non-existent on Sunday, this past Sunday, it still doesn't matter. It's a win in my book because he is the number 1 guy. But Keon Coleman is showing up. The defense looks way better than I thought it would. Von Miller's making an impact as well as the other front. Russo is just, he had that goal line stand. It was a great defensive performance this last Sunday and all the way throughout the year. It's been superb. It's 6-2 right now. Josh Allen threw his first interception this past Sunday. That's insane. Forgot about that. Didn't know he had thrown any picks until this past Sunday. But it happens to the best of them. Josh Allen has been known to throw a lot of picks. And for him to go 8 weeks without throwing one, that's pretty good. Pretty good. The run game's going great. James Cook looks good. The reason they don't get an A+ for me and only an A- is really just because of the 2 losses that they had. Texans and the Ravens are the 2 losses. The Texans, they really should have beaten that game. It was a pretty close game. They lost 23-20. I think that's one of the games that they really needed to come out with. But as far as the AFC East goes, I think that the Bills are kind of the walking dogs in this division.
Oh, yeah. Not even close. They're running away with it, so they're in a good spot. I'll go to another team in that division. I'll talk about the New York Jets. There's no grade you could give the Jets other than F. We talked about the Jets in a video already this episode. If it's up, I'll link it right there when it's ready. Go watch it. I will expand on these thoughts. But basically, when you hand your entire franchise over to a 40-year-old quarterback, whether he was coming off an Achilles or not, and then you fire the one good thing the organization had going, which was a coach that gave your defense and your team an identity, it implodes. You lose that identity. It was going bad beforehand. It's going worse now. The Jets are and will always be the Jets. This was a team that wanted to compete for a Super Bowl. I didn't think they would, but that's what they said. Their aspirations were Super Bowl, playoffs. They're going to be lucky to win 5 games. If you hope for the Super Bowl and you win 5 games, there's no way you can grade it anything other than an absolute failure. It's an F.
I completely agree. Let's move on to the next team in this division, the Miami Dolphins. I will be giving them a C-, mainly C for the word concussion. And I'm going to give them a C-. I know it's not really fair to judge them on injury, but
I think you're being generous.
Yeah, well, C- is what they're getting from me just because of the injury. You can't really give them credit for having the backup quarterback in. It's been a rough ride for the Dolphins. They got Tua back. They do look, re-energized. They did look better this past Sunday, but overall, they still needed to pull out this win to really give them any shot to be competitive in this division. Again, like I said about the Bills, they're the walking dogs. The Dolphins have a long way to go from what I thought they would be preseason with this offensive powerhouse that they have with Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Raheem Mostert, A-Chain. Like, you'd think that this team should be scoring points left and right all the way up and down the field, and yet they struggle to get over 20 points in any given game. Only twice it's happened. Week one against the Jags, and this past week, 27 points against the Cardinals. So it seems that when Tua's in, they can score over 20 points, but still not enough to win football games. It's unfortunate for the Dolphins. They get a C- from me.
Wow, you're more generous than me. I would go lower. We'll see. We'll see what they can make out of the season. Yeah. The Kansas City Chiefs, my team, was tempted to not give them the perfect grade, but when you're 7-0 after losing all your receivers, what do? Would you give them something else?
No, I just don't like to hear it.
Okay.
Look, this isn't a rebuttal against you. It's just I just don't like hearing it. I know what the grade should be.
Okay, I was wondering. A+, not just because they're 7-0, because they're 7-0 when they lost Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Isaiah Pacheco. Lost them
everybody.
All, and they're undefeated for the third time, and I think in franchise history. Yeah, they made a trade. They brought in DeAndre Hopkins. They just traded for Uche from the Patriots to add some more help on the edge. Omenihu should get healthy and come back. They're just rolling. Only thing that worries me as a Chiefs fan, getting hot early in the year. Usually teams that win the Super Bowl get hot later. Are they hitting their peak too soon? I doubt it because they got Mahomes. Yeah, it's not pretty, but the defense is the best in football. The offense isn't as bad as people make you believe. They move the ball. They don't get on third down a lot. They've just had trouble in the red zone. Kareem Hunt and DeAndre Hopkins will help with that. They're the best team in football. A+, the season's going better than could be expected given all the injuries.
I like it. I don't hate it. I never can hate on Patrick Mahomes. Even though I don't like it emotionally, I still know that they are an A+ team for everything they've overcome this season. Well, let's move on to another team in the AFC West and talk about the Denver Broncos. Wow. I can't even begin to describe how much I want to and am giving this team an A. What Bo Nix and Sean Payton have done at the Broncos is nothing short of remarkable. It is a terrific offense, and it's really just it keeps getting better every single week. The defense is great. They have a couple of great quality wins. One against the Bucs when they only let the Bucs score 7 points. Did you know that happened?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
that's crazy. One of the highest scoring Tampa Bay is one of the highest scoring offenses in the entire NFL. They held them to 7 points.
Tell that to my bookie.
It's just an overall impressive performance from a team that everybody thought would not be nearly as good as what they are currently. The Denver Broncos is they're, aside from the Chiefs, they're the second team in this division, I believe. 5-3 on the year, and I think they could easily get a wild card slot. I know I'm not really going to pitch it to you on much, but do you agree? Do you think they could get a wild card slot?
I completely agree. As a matter of fact, before the season, when I was making my playoff predictions, I had them as the 7th seed, and I just fought against it and took it. I thought they were going to be in the hunt for that final wild card spot just because I still believed in Sean Payton. They're still exceeding what I thought. Their defense is incredible. They've got one of the best defenses in the league. Bo Nix is okay. He's Sean Payton's managing him, and that's what he needs to do. This is just a great coaching job by Sean Payton. Shows you he's still got it. The Broncos are a team nobody wants to face because that defense, and they're still taking that Russell Wilson contract on. So it's impressive. I'll take on another team. Last team we'll talk about in the AFC West, the Los Angeles Chargers, bringing in new coach Jim Harbaugh from Michigan. And I'm going to give the Chargers a B+ because I think this is probably what you expect. This is what you want. You're 4-3. You're winning games. You might sneak into the playoffs. You might not, but you're clearly building something. You're starting to build an identity. With the lack of weapons this team has, I mean, they really have no weapons. The fact that they've won 4 games is impressive. They put up 132 points this year, but they've only allowed 91 points. I mean, that's really well done. They're able to control the game. They do what they need to do. That's what a good coach does. He looks at the roster. He says, what can I do with these guys? And he executes. I don't have a lot to elaborate on them. I just think they're doing what every Harbaugh fan, what every Chargers fan hoped they would do. This is what we expected to see. This is what we're seeing. The Chargers are going to get better year by year. It's a B+.
Baltimore Ravens. I had them at an A-, and then I just looked at their schedule, and I'm dropping them down to a B+. Look, this offense, we know it's rolling, right? Like, we know that Lamar, Derrick Henry, they're just playing lights out great football. But the problem is the defense, man. I don't think enough people are talking about this. Like, they say that the Baltimore Ravens defense is good. They've only been really good against one team this year, and it's my Bills. They only allowed 10 points to the Bills. But listen, they lost against the Browns last week, which is enough to drop you to like a C ranking in my book. But they let them score, 29 points on them. They let the Bucs score 31. The Commanders score 23, 38 from the Bengals. Like, this is a problem. The defense has given up way too many points. And that's what's going to drop them to a B+ for me. The offense seems to be rocking and rolling, but this defense has to step up, man, if they want any shot at overcoming the AFC North here, the AFC North, and beating out a team like, Pittsburgh, who is on that cusp of, especially with Russell Wilson in the game now, on the cusp of possibly winning that division and taking away from the Ravens.
Speaking of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'll just give them an A because they're exceeding expectations. I thought they would be better than last year. To be honest, I thought Justin Fields would be the quarterback. When he started the season, I was like, there's no way they go back to Russ. I'll credit Mike Tomlin. Russ does add a dynamic that Justin Fields did not, and I didn't expect it. Even after tonight where they beat the Giants, Russell Wilson pushes the ball downfield. He throws the 50-50 ball to Pickens. Pickens was a non-factor in the offense with Fields. Well, now he's brought back in. It's actually crazy how much Russell Wilson's presence and just willingness to push the ball downfield elevates this team. We know the defense is great. That's really all I've got to say. Mike Tomlin always does a good job. He always gets them over 500. Right now, they're leading the AFC North at 6-2.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I said they were on the cusp. I forgot about the win tonight. That
it puts them over.
Yep, and so now they are leading the AFC North. Crazy, man. Isn't that just insane? Would you ever think that the Ravens would be ever falling behind the Steelers when it came preseason this year?
I did not. I thought the Steelers would sneak into the playoffs like they always do. I did not think they would be kind of on cruise control right now. I still don't think they're an elite team. Like, I don't think they're going to, make a lot of noise in the playoffs. But obviously, football, it's one elimination games. You never know what can happen. Steelers getting A.
Let's talk about the Houston Texans over in the AFC South, a team that is unfortunately plagued by a lot of injuries. The AFC in general, they have a lot of injuries this year, but the Texans, man, they just seem to just be losing one by one when it comes to receiver. Diggs is out, Collins is out. It's a rough ride for them. Joe Mixon was out for a while. It's clear that when Joe Mixon is in this offense, the team does so much better. And even with all the injuries plaguing them, they did happen to beat the Colts this past Sunday with a tired Anthony Richardson. So in my grading scale, the Texans are going to get a B- from me. I do think that this team has a really good shot at pulling out the win in the AFC South, really just because all their other opponents are god-awful. Like, every team in this division except for the Texans, they're just bad. Now, if Joe Flacco plays for the Colts, they are a little bit better, but ultimately the Texans should be just running away with this division, and yet they are still struggling just a little bit. I need them to shape up a little bit more. I know they're 6-2, and you say, Ryan, that's a great record. I get it, but some of these wins have been really sloppy.
Yeah, and their offensive line is genuinely atrocious. I mean, it's bad.
Yes.
It's just, you can't win a championship like that. They've got issues. They overcome it because of their defense and their quarterback, but they've definitely got issues. The Colts, let's stay in that division. We talked about them a little, talked about Anthony Richardson. I'll link that video here. I'm going to give them a C. You could argue for them to get better or worse. Ultimately, I'm giving them a C simply because I like Shane Steichen. We've seen what Shane Steichen can do with quarterbacks. When he can't do anything with Anthony Richardson, the guy's a bust. The fact that they're 4-4 is impressive. Me and you say every week when we do our picks, we're like, if Joe Flacco's playing, I like the Colts more. If he's not, I like the other team. If Joe Flacco becomes the starter going forward, like he should, if they'll allow it and Shane Steichen can put Flacco in, I don't know if they can win the division because the Texans already have the 2 games on them. They beat them twice, but they can maybe make the playoffs. We know Shane Steichen's a really good coach. The Colts have weapons. They have talented receivers. They have talented players on defense. They're well coached. They're in every game they play almost. They just need reliable and consistent quarterback play. The fact that they're still keeping their head above water, staying at 500 with the Anthony Richardson disaster gets them a C.
Well, a team that I am actually pretty excited to talk about because of how much disdain I have for this team, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Wow, two wins. If I told you preseason that the Jags would have 2 wins by week 8, would you think I was crazy or would this be status quo?
I would think you were absolutely freaking insane.
I would agree with you. So for me, this team gets the dreaded F ranking. Everything about this team is awful. It's atrocious. It's an abject disaster in Jacksonville, and I do not know why they haven't done anything to fix the problem. Like, as far as trades go, as far as coaching goes,
Ryan, because they gave the problem $55 million.
That is true. That is absolutely true. But you know what I'm saying, though? Like, they still haven't made any small moves to try to help anything. Like, even these other teams are making little tiny adjustments to try to get better. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they're just saying, hey, they're doing the Anthony Richardson tap out. We're done. There's no shot for us winning any. Like, if this team gets more than 5 wins, I will be completely shocked. Everything about this team is bad. Even when they have good performances, like, it can get your hopes up for a minute, and then you're like, oh, right, I forgot. It's still Jacksonville. It's still Trevor Lawrence. It's still Doug Peterson. Nothing about this team gets me excited except for Brian Thomas Jr. He is the only silver lining in this entire organization, and when he plays well, he plays really well. But other than that, this team is just doing awful. And it seems like they're almost in every game that they play. Like, they play these teams really close, but they always find a way to lose at the end. Their fourth quarter, like 5 minutes and below, is just the worst NFL gameplay in the entire organization.
Well, Trevor Lawrence has just been awful. I mean, he's been absolutely terrible. One of the biggest busts of our life. I think maybe you can't. It's too far to go on a bust, but when he was talked about as like a Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, a generational prospect, I mean, it's been a disaster. It's been an absolute disaster. Last up, Cincinnati Bengals. We talked about them a little when we touched on the Eagles. I'm going to give the Bengals a D because this was a team that should compete in the playoffs. This is a team that should compete to win the AFC North, to win the Super Bowl. They're 3-5. I mean, they are 3-5. They're out of it. They're not going to make the playoffs. Joe Burrow has played good, but you have no run game. The defense is genuinely awful. And you know Lou Anarumo is a great defensive coordinator, but they just have personnel issues. And I've listened to people talk about it. The Bengals are notoriously cheap. They're not bringing in a lot of talented free agents. They're not going and making trades. They won't even pay Jamar Chase. I don't know. Maybe they should move on from Zach Taylor. I used to think they should. Then I was like, I don't know. I still think their offensive scheme is kind of boring and bland. We've been talking about that for 3 years. They've got issues. The bottom line is, whether it's the coach's fault or not, you can't go 3-5 with Joe Burrow as your quarterback. You cannot. And unless the Bengals want to make drastic changes, I don't know how they fix it going forward. It's a complete disappointment, and you got to go D because this is a team that, in my opinion, was a Super Bowl contender, and they're not.
All right, guys, that's the show for today. The AFC Report Card Grades midseason has wrapped. It is over. It's done with. Hopefully, we'll look back at the end of the year when we do the end of the year grades and hope that we're wrong on a lot of these teams because, you know, we wish the best for everybody,
right?
Except the Jags. Anyway, let's move on to next week. Tune in. We'll have week 9 reactions. I'm sure to be some great football games, a lot better than this week. And we'll have the NFC breakdown, the midseason report card for the NFC next week. Be sure to tune in. Tristan, get us out of here.
Yeah, we appreciate all the support. We appreciate you guys stopping in. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about it. 2 idiots covering one sport, bluffing our way through the NFL football season. We'll also be back on Friday with our Week 9 picks. Make sure you check that video out. We'll see you then. We'll see you next week. Have a safe week, everyone. For Ryan, I'm Tristan. Goodbye.